secure and trustworthy internet for everyone shouldn't kind of set you there. But as one of the many hundred or plus global chapters, we do the same, we focus on the same thing, basically promoting the open development, evolution, and use of the internet for the benefit of all people in Trinidad and Tobago, and by extension, the region and the world. However, we do understand that the internet is a foundational tool for people in all areas of industry and economic life. So as a result, we're looking to encourage collaboration and synergies between all areas of the creative, technical, cultural, and artistic communities. And we're doing that by things like this webinar, where we utilize our knowledge of the internet to assist and bring together people to say, okay, how can the internet work for you? We just like the internet, but you need to do other things. You need to do different things. And how do you do that? How can we help you use the internet to do the things you want to do? You're not necessarily techie, fine, but the internet can support you in doing what you want. So in order to do that, we're going to have we facilitate these sorts of discussions, and we will collaborate with anybody who will share goals like that, because all of us here are really about using any tool that we have, in our case the internet, to make a better Trinidad and Tobago, a better life for all of us, better economy. That's it.
Thank you so very much, Jackie. And of course, by way of very brief introduction, my name is Kevin Swift. I am the Head of Strategic Relations and Integration at LACNIC, the Latin American Caribbean Internet Addresses Registry. But I'm also an ISOC team member, and you may come to appreciate that many of us in this circle wear multiple hats. And of course, Jacqueline didn't speak to many other endeavors, including what she has done in terms of internet governance on a global scale and here within the Caribbean. And I would like to thank, I see we have over 34 persons connected to us. We are expecting full capacity tonight of roughly 100 people. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to connect us today and to discuss this topic with us. Why are we discussing e-business and e-creatives at this very time? And of course, it was very serendipitous that there was an e-commerce webinar this morning, Get Going with E-commerce, that was sponsored by the Republic Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. In this country and in the wider Caribbean, when we look at the road to post-COVID-19 economic recovery, we have to acknowledge other poignant global issues that will affect our livelihoods, such as climate change. We have been seeing an increase in the frequency and intensity of hurricanes and other natural disasters that affect our area. And particularly for Trinidad and Tobago, the fallout associated with the decline of global energy prices will have a particularly nefarious effect on our economy. And then came COVID-19. Within a short few months, we have had a significant leap in online activity. We have had talks about digital transformation becoming actual actions. And we have, just glancing at business and entrepreneurial sectors, some organizations and people who leverage these extenuating circumstances to accelerate strategic imperatives that they had long planned in mind for going digital. We have others who are using digital tools as just-in-time alternatives to in-person activities. And of course, there's so many of us who have been unable to adjust to this very tumultuous change. But we assume that some of those barriers to absolute transformations or digital alternatives are associated with lack of resources, maybe financial or even know-how. And on the question of know-how, that's where this intervention is situated from the Internet Society Trinidad and Tobago chapter. Media around the globe, including the New York Times, Al Jazeera, have reported that the arts and entertainment sectors are among the hardest hit by the coronavirus pandemic. With the arts being such an integral point to Trinbagonian and Caribbean identity, we felt it imperative to have this conversation right now. But before I continue, let me just inform you of a few housekeeping rules in terms of how the session will pan out. All mics remain off during the panelists' initial interventions. During this period, you may type your question or comment at any time using the chat button in the Zoom toolbar, and your question or comment will be read out by the Zoom moderator at appropriate times. Based on time constraints, some questions may not be addressed in the first segment of the webinar, but they will be addressed either in the question and answer segment or via follow-up communication after the webinar. The webinar is also being live streamed to iTalk TT's Facebook page. Facebook viewers may also make questions or comments to the chat box under the video, and the webinar host will seek to have them addressed by the panel when reasonably possible. An open question and answer segment to encourage live interaction with attendees is scheduled after the initial interventions by the panelists. To participate, we ask that you please use the raise hand function in the panelist panel of the Zoom interface. And when called upon by the webinar chair, you'll be asked to turn on your mic and make your intervention directly. And when you're making an intervention, kindly remember to say your name and to whom your intervention is directed before asking a question or making a comment in the open Q&A segment. If your intervention is directed to all panelists, be sure to indicate as such. And please note that this session is being recorded and will be available on www.isoc.tt in short order after the webinar has finished. And you may send particular thoughts or comments or questions after the webinar to contact@isoc.tt, and we'll ensure that your intervention gets addressed. So who exactly are our panelists here? We have a lovely team of experts, a lovely team of practitioners with us. Let me start you off with Bartlett Morgan, and I'm sure Bartlett will indicate right now who he is. Bartlett Morgan is a senior associate in the Barbados office of Lex Caribbean Attorneys at Law. Bartlett is the firm's lead on digital law matters. In this capacity, he has advised leading regional and international entities in the banking, fintech, medical, and tourism sectors on privacy compliance, intellectual property disputes, digital broadcasting, e-commerce, and navigating telecommunications regulations. Bartlett is a member of the International Association of Privacy Professionals and is a member of the Government of Barbados Telecommunications Reform Working Group. He's also one of the founding members of the Barbados chapter of the Internet Society. We also have with us Camille Selvon Abrahams. Camille is the program coordinator for animation studies at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. She has a Bachelor of Arts in Media and Communication with specialization in animation from Goldsmiths, University of London, and is the founding director of the NGO Anime Caribe Animation Festival. She recently served as the chairwoman of Film TT. Together with business partner Jason Lindsay, they created the first Caribbean outsourcing animation studio called Full Circle Animation Studio in Trinidad. She currently runs an NGO in collaboration with CARICOM called the SHIFT Project, which is an intervention program using digital technology to bring at-risk teens into the 21st century. We also have with us Dr. Karen Niles, who is a lecturer with the Institute of International Relations at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustus campus. At present, Dr. Niles conducts research on cultural industries as a pathway to low carbon growth. He is also the managing director of Coral Green Limited, a firm that provides management, marketing, and research support to creative professionals who wish to find new markets for the content they produce and/or expand the consumption of their works within markets in which they already are present. To this end, the company currently represents the dynamic musical band known as Freetown Collective. And last but not least, we have Mr. Miller Bannister, a personal branding and PR expert who works with entrepreneurs and professionals who want to grow their reputation and personal brand as the top voice and go-to expert in their industry. Jamila began growing her own brand in 2016 as a way to reach out to recruiters. This eventually turned into creating content, hosting workshops, and giving talks on personal branding. Visit her website, www.jbannisterbranding.com, to see more of her blog posts, grab a free digital download on personal branding, or to get her personal branding how-to book called The Brand Print. Our idea this evening is to start with a macroscopic view of legal, regulatory frameworks, trends applicable to digital development and in particular, creative entrepreneurship. And then we also like to have a macroscopic view and unpack the issue of education reform and the future of work and how this could be translated into clear imperatives for digital and technological creatives in this country and in the Caribbean. And then we'll move away from these high-level analyses and hear from our practitioners dealing with the day-to-day challenges that creators face when it comes to entrepreneurial activity online. And there we will hear from our personal branding and e-marketing experts and our cultural industries lecturer and consultant who have been advising traditional creators on digital strategy, engagement, conversion of fans into customers, etc. Right away, we'll get into it, and I would like to call on Bartlett right now. So Bartlett, what is the state of laws, of regulatory frameworks to support Trinbagonian digital activity, digital commercial activity, to support entrepreneurial activity? And of course, we are keeping in mind here the creatives that we have joined on. And in the absence of clear enabling guidelines, what sort of private legal ordering or private best practices could responsible creative entrepreneurs undertake to make the best out of e-business and e-commerce opportunities?
Okay, so there's a bit there to unpack. I think there are two sort of big themes in your questions. If I understand them correctly, it's essentially, well, state of play, and then sans any specific legislative direction or policy direction, what ought the creatives do? I think let's start with the first one. And I think to understand the state of play, it's perhaps a good idea, first of all, to understand what possibly is more or less an ideal in terms of the legislative framework to support what creatives do. And in saying that, I think it's important to appreciate that very often aspects of the legislative framework that ultimately support creatives doing what they do online have nothing to do with what creatives may need to consider on a daily basis. It just needs to be there. And so, for example, if you think about the internet and digital economies and so on, and their functioning, one of the baseline things you need is actual infrastructure in place. People need to be connected to the internet. And so things like telecoms sort of regulatory framework is important. Beyond that, you start thinking specifically, okay, we have the baseline, we're connected to the internet, well, where do you go from there? So, well, one of the first places you probably want to go is some kind of framework for when persons are actually, like creatives are actually doing business, you're selling products and services via the internet and so on. There needs to be some kind of framework in place to protect your customers. And so that kind of legislative framework is important. And then I think related to consumer protection is the underlying question of trust. And the other side of trust, as we've come to appreciate from recent experiences, not necessarily just in Trinidad, but just in the region and the world at large, is the importance of privacy. And so it's usually a good idea to have that kind of framework in place because it then tends to create an environment of trust in which persons are more likely to access your digital services as a creative online. Now, beyond that, I think it's really important to have an overall framework that makes sense of or validates the interactions or transactions that we have digitally as if they were normal day-to-day physical sort of traditional interactions and transactions. And so electronic transactions type legislation is usually very important as well, because that then creates a framework for validating when you agree to something electronically with a customer, for instance, or with one of your vendors that provide you with services as a creative. Now, without belaboring the point, I think even after you sort of cover off those basics, there are certain things you wouldn't want to take for granted. Obviously, cybercrime type legislation, but even beyond that, when you move beyond the basics and you get to a more sophisticated space, as I imagine we all need to be, and perhaps COVID is pushing us towards, are matters that cover off things like digital identity and legislation that creates a framework around that. Increasingly, as we start accessing services and allowing persons to access services through the platforms that we ourselves may create, it's important to know who it is you're doing business with or you're interacting with. And so that framework is important for that kind of a thing, and a number of other reasons which we probably don't have time to get into. And I think beyond that, there is the whole central question to e-entrepreneur or a digital creative, which is getting paid. And so digital payment frameworks, I think, are really critical to pull everything together. So it's actually a viable alternative. Now, having outlined what, to my mind, is the ideal legislative or policy type framework, the question then becomes, well, what are we seeing in the Caribbean and in Trinidad in particular? So we can cover off certain things. So for example, cybercrime legislation, virtually every jurisdiction you survey will have cybercrime legislation. Whether or not it's satisfactory is a different question, but in fact, they all have it in the region, and certainly Trinidad as well. There's things like the telecoms type legislation, which would say who can be a player in the space, who can provide the infrastructure, that kind of a thing. That's pretty much commonplace as well, and that's not even a question. Where you have the challenges are other fundamental building block type legislation, things like privacy legislation, which to my mind, it does a lot of the work for creatives and for reasons which we'll probably get into later. In Trinidad, for instance, there is legislation on the books. So if you go back and search back in 2011, well, you passed the Privacy Act. But as many of you in the audience probably already know, the fundamental aspects of that act weren't actually put into force. And so it is as if there is no privacy legislation in effect in Trinidad and Tobago. Regionally, we sort of see a general move in that space towards more legislation, but I won't belabor the point. As it regards things like digital payments, while there isn't, to the best of my knowledge, comprehensive digital payments legislation on the books already in Trinidad, I mean, we do see very specific niche legislation. Like, for example, I remember a few years ago, there was an act that was passed to facilitate payments through the court systems and so on. And, so that's part and parcel of it, or certainly that's a specialized example of, a digital payments type framework at play. But obviously, I think more comprehensive legislation needs to be in place. And certainly from, the actors, regulators, central bank and so on, in the very least, there needs to be a more comprehensive regulatory guidance framework around it, so that persons are sure of what they ought to do and how they ought to operate, including digital creatives, as you mentioned it. Now, without spending too much time on that, I want to jump to the other part of it really quickly, which is, well, let's say you don't have the ideal framework in place. And I think we've already established that all the building blocks are not in place, certainly within Trinidad and within the wider Caribbean at large. What do you do then? So what I would say is simply, experience has shown that invariably those creatives and entrepreneurs who voluntarily abide by what are in effect best practices tend to be the ones who have something of an additional advantage in terms of how they go to market online. And so, for example, we know that, for instance, let's take an example from the privacy space. Very often, it's persons who demonstrate to their potential clients that they will take care of whatever personal data they get from you. They're very transparent about what it is they plan to do with it, how they'll use it, how long they'll keep it, that kind of thing. So even in the absence of some law compelling them to do it, it tends to do the work of creating some amount of trust in broad terms that perhaps their competitors wouldn't be doing. And so it's an additional sort of incentive to do business with persons like that. And I think I'll probably cut there for now.
Great. Thanks a lot, Bartlett. Among the things that you were mentioning, there's just one quick topic I was wondering if you could spend just a minute to touch on.
Sure.
Creatives already in a traditional offline world, navigating things like intellectual property.
Yes.
What do they need to consider when you're looking at being digital, when you're creating music or photography?
So here's what I would say. There is very often this idea somehow once you transition to doing things digitally via the internet, that somehow different rules apply. That's not necessarily true. And more often than not, it's not the case. The traditional legislative framework and regulatory framework that apply in the non-virtual world, they apply as well. And so with that in mind, you want to think about, I think, two things as a digital creative. How do you protect what you are building and own? And how do you not infringe on the creative output of others? And we could have this conversation in different ways. We could sort of delve into legislation, which I think might probably bore everybody to death, or we could just be more practical about it. So you want to be mindful as a digital creative of the platforms you use and the degree to which those platforms, for example, allow persons to easily and quickly sort of, copy your original works without your permission. You want to think about, for example, practical things like timing. Do you necessarily need to have your digital outputs on the internet exposed indefinitely? Or do you want to put them up just to perhaps have a certain effect and then you take them down again or make them private again to kind of limit the exposure to the public once you've had the desired impact, whether from a PR perspective or otherwise? And so broadly speaking, the fundamentals don't change. If you want to develop your brand and build it out and you want to do it digitally as opposed to primarily just traditionally, well, you still need to go and register your trademarks. It's the same old system. You still need to take steps to ensure that there's evidence of the copyright in your intellectual output, as it were. In the same way that you naturally would. I remember back in the day, and I won't age myself too much, but certainly I remember back in the day, one of the things that we were taught back when I was doing things like digital media was, well, send yourself an email. Keep it simple, guys. Send yourself an email with the evidence of that creative output, whether it's the lyrics to the song you wrote, what have you. So worst case scenario, things push comes to shove, somebody else has potentially infringed it. You can go, well, here is the timestamp proof that this was my creative output first. And so, we could probably dive into it a bit more if you'd like, but I want to keep it short, being that we're just starting the conversation.
Thanks very much, Bartlett. I want to, and thank you. I think you gave a wonderful first take synopsis as to some of the major considerations that we need to keep in mind. I want to segue a bit to Camille and we can talk about education reform. So Camille is quite familiar with the characteristics of the learning environment for technological creators. Camille, what does this education reform mean? What do we need to do? How do we prepare for the future of work when it comes to our technological creators? Because we may assume that just given the current experience we see with the education sector, there might be some challenges in thinking of a digital or long-term dispensation. I think sometimes, or in this case, they may be considered the ones who look at digital alternatives given the circumstances. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, you said might. It's not might. There will be challenges without a doubt. I made some notes here, so you'd find I'll be looking down a bit. The idea of future of work is greatly impacted and goes hand in hand with education. And I know that may sound like, oh yeah, of course it does, but often it's disconnected. You have work, you have education, there's no connection. or not enough connection. No, it's critical that it has the connection, right? Because of what is happening. And I am my information that I'm sharing is based on my 16 years of working in the industry, in the education area in Trinidad. So it's research and development that is real and that is authentic. And it's from what I'm seeing with my own students. So it is critical that we connect work with education a lot more now. So just to start with my story a little bit, because it has a lot to do with what I'm going to go into. During CXC, I knew I wanted to do art, but I loved certain other subjects that obviously was clashing. You all know the terminology, right? It's clashing. You can't do it because you're an artist. And one area in particular, I put this out on Facebook this morning, and oh my God, the kind of responses I got was like, wow. Because a lot, it really connected to a lot of our generation. So I wanted to do physics. There was a reason why I wanted to do physics, right? And I knew in my head I wanted to do physics. But of course, the powers that be said, you're doing art, you cannot do physics. And I couldn't afford to do it outside. So I didn't do physics. Now I'm in animation. And when I first got into animation, I realized, okay, that's why I wanted to do physics, because physics is directly related to animation, right? You're creating a world, or you're creating worlds, or you're creating people, or you're creating characters. You need to understand how the universe works. You need to understand how things work. But it took me decades to understand why that is so important, right? So the whole framework of our education system is based on this absolutely old, archaic, colonial ideal. I was going to use a different word, but old colonial ideal, whereby it is about us being placed in particular areas that suited the time. And it also suited the, politically, it also suited the situation, because if you go back to the whole idea of bureaucracy, it was about creating formats whereby you stay in your corner, you bat in your crease, this is what you do. You are going to be a tin god in order to keep this thing going. So it's really, really deep rooted to our colonial construct. And we have to break that up. We have to break it up. It is critical now that we have to break it up, because if we don't, it is really, really unfair to our students. It is unfair for us to continue this methodology for our students. So with that in mind, I want to also kind of bring into the future of work and how it impacts on industry locally. And I could only speak of Trinidad because this is where I exist. So we have two companies I could talk about immediately. One that I'm part of, I'm the founding director of Full Circle Animation Studio. And a lot of my students formed a company called Coded Arts. Full Circle is animation. COVID did not stop Full Circle Animation Studio. COVID-19 did not stop work. As far as Coded Art, COVID-19 did not stop work. Our students continue working. Our students actually doing outsourcing work, so bringing in foreign exchange, while a lot of other people are struggling, right? So it is perfect for this kind of time. I'll tell you what the challenge is with the companies like that is that, one, the whole idea of what Bartlett talked about, the US and having to work between islands and having to get the US there and bring the US here, and that is a challenge, right? So I'm so really happy you talked about that, and these are the kind of things that need to be, they're integral for the success of this kind of industry. The other challenge is that if you want to ramp up, and I could speak about that on the Full Circle level, if you want to ramp up, instead of employing 15 young people in a job that bringing in foreign exchange, you go to the bank and you say you're doing animation, they're watching you and asking, oh, what you talking about? It's animation, it's games. And the banking, the banking sector does not understand that this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And they see it as a risky business, and therefore you are not going to get the kind of investment to ramp up, right? These two organizations could ramp up to 100 people right now and get work. They will get work. There's no question about it, because another reason why they would get work is that this bricks and mortar thing does not work in this context. The bricks and mortar is the production pipeline that has no walls whatsoever. So your investment is in your production, your digital production pipeline that is international. All right, it's not even to do with the training of the technology, because that is easy. We could easily do that. But if you train up in the production pipeline that feeds into all the other international studios around the world, you are speaking the same language and making the same US. You're making the same US. All right, so those are the challenges. So I want to go a little bit into the education side of it. Some of the challenges I'm seeing on the primary level, on the tertiary level, and then I'm going to speak briefly about what UTT is doing in its capacity as a tertiary level institution in order to deal with it. So on the primary level, I see that this is the most critical. This is the one I'm most scared about, because you're talking about primary schools from all over Trinidad and Tobago now having to, because of COVID-19, jump from a blackboard. You had some primary schools that were using blackboards and dusters, you know, all right? A lot of our primary schools still using blackboard and dusters and had to find a computer. What are we going to do about that? Some of these schools in the countries and in those areas had to find computers. What are we going to do about that? I am most concerned about the primary level. The other thing is putting the students in front of a computer, like how we are sitting here. It's like saying, this is a pizza, it's nice and hot and it smells really good. Watch it and don't touch it. Sit down there for 3 hours and don't touch it. That's what you're saying to children, because when they see a computer, what do they see? When they see a computer, they see games, they see TikTok, they see YouTube, right? They see Netflix. And until we change that view from being a consumer, from our students being a consumer to becoming a creator of content, then it's okay to sit in front of the computer for 3 hours, all right? Because they are distracted, because they do not see the computer as a way to be creative. So that's the challenge. I also think that, for instance, things like coding needs to start in the primary level. There's no question about it. Coding is like, and I know I'm speaking to a lot of people here who understand this technology. Coding is like the alphabet in modern times. You see, like how, 30 years ago, we say students have to learn the alphabet. Well, our children need to learn coding from primary level, because it's a language too. So we say with the alphabet, BAT is B plus A plus T makes BAT. The coding language is saying, if I do this and do that and do this, this is what will happen on my digital platform. And of course, we're not going to do coding on that kind of level to primary schools, but you start that whole idea of speaking in that kind of language. So there's very basic things that you could start in the primary level. Regarding the tertiary level, I'm more excited about the tertiary level, and maybe it's because I have a bunch of students that I work really closely with, and we're making some changes. But the challenge with tertiary level is that we are not accustomed to being in the front. We are not accustomed of being in the forefront and in being the ones that are creating new things, and we always catch up. I'm sure, and you in the Caribbean understand that we always have to catch up, right? This is a point now where technology, the terminology exponential technology is that it is moving so fast, and it's becoming so easy to use, and it's becoming so cheap too. Those three things could put us in the forefront. But what has to happen is that the methodology in our schools need to change, because our teachers, and I'm saying this as a teacher, our teachers are not prepared to deal with this. I'm being real honest. Our teachers are not who's going to teach exponential technology in schools in Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the Caribbean? Yeah. I can't, and I am considered, kind of out there and understanding it. I can't. So what do we do? Do we continue to catch up? What do we do? So when we talk about things like AR, VR, which is old technology as far as I'm concerned, we now have to look at holography, because that too is something because of what is happening here. Holographic technology is what's going to be another big thing, because, okay, the teacher can't be in the school physically, but the teacher will be in the school as a holograph. I'm talking way beyond here, but that is what eventually going to happen. When are our students going to start to experiment with these sort of technologies? When we have teachers that are not prepared to even deal with these technologies. And I'm talking about myself. I don't want the teachers to get vexed with me here. So my thing is, in order to deal with that, we have to push our students to do a lot more research and development. That is one way of doing it, research and development. Throw them in it. All right, this is a new technology. Let me see what you could do with it. All right, that is one way of dealing with it. Last but not least, regarding the kind of things that we are doing at UTT, we are looking at, of course, working now with the VPN technology so that we could work from home, so that our students could also have the technology to work from home with the software. All right, so that is looking really well for us. Hardware, software is a big problem. A lot of you all in the news, you all would have known that UTT let go 250 people. All right, so money is a big issue. We cannot keep buying new technology. We cannot keep buying hardware. So therefore, we have to find solutions. One of the things we are looking at the university is cloud computing, whereby we're able to use very basic computers and get the technology from the cloud, and therefore we pay for it when we need it and when we have to use it. So therefore, it's a lot more affordable. And the other thing we focus on is the diaspora. The diaspora for us is critical, right? And that this will solve the issue of us not having the people with the technological experience to teach the courses. But we do have a lot of our Caribbean people that are doing fabulous, fantastic things, right? In Disney, Pixar, as far as my industry, I know I could call up on Trinis in Pixar, I could call up on Trinis and Jamaicans in Cartoon Network, I could call up on my Caribbean people in all the high-end industry in the world. The diaspora is very important. The challenge we have with the diaspora is how can we soften up that painful transition of being in outside of the Caribbean and working in the Caribbean. It's painful, right? Because we have different ways of working. Last but not least, because I know that we short on time, a good thing for us with the diaspora is that we've been able to attract people from the diaspora. So one person in particular in our program, in the games aspect, is someone called Kaifas Moore. Kaifas Moore spent 6 years in EA Games and decided he wants to come back and give back. So we have someone with that specialization at UTT to focus on game development and game art. And last but not least, we need to change the methodology of teaching in the classroom. And this one for me is really important, because a lot of research now is showing that even how your classroom is divided affects how a student thinks. The lighting that is coming into the classroom, the air that is coming into the classroom. The classroom cannot be only 4 walls. I took 3 of my students to Guyana, Suriname last year to do part of their course in Guyana, Suriname for at-risk youth through some funding with the same CARICOM. That was their classroom. Their classroom was actually physically being outside into a situation that is not the normal traditional classroom. And the last thing I want to say is this situation that comes up. I remember doing a class and preparing for the class and presenting on it. And one of my students after the class said, Miss, listen, that thing you're talking about, you could do it much quicker. And this is how you do it much quicker. You do that, dot, 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 dot. And I thought, okay, all right, what do I do with this? Where did you learn that? I mean, I'm very interested in where you learned it. Miss YouTube, Miss YouTube, what are we going to do about that? Because it is a reality. Our students are learning quicker. And even the methodology of just looking at it on the screen, they're doing it, they are learning it. And last statement I'm making, and I read this today, where a millennial with a very big following made the statement, universities are a con. These young people, if we don't change this system drastically and quickly, their eyes will be opened up, because in a way, they are correct. 4 years to learn something that you could learn in 2 years or less, right? And especially outside of the Caribbean, where it is very much business focused. So we have a lot to do. We have a lot to do with our system, but I think I am hopeful. I'm hopeful that we have the capacity here in the Caribbean to make those changes. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, Camille, wonderful. I think that is a great synopsis. I think your testimony to the difficulties, the unclear pathways that someone who just has a passion as yourself looking at animation, what they have to face and the type of environment we're in. And it comes back to what you mentioned at the start, the huge disconnection between education and work not only being working in an office, but the wide range of opportunities and how we are organizing ourselves in going forward with the digital world. Now, we have a number of comments and questions coming up in the chat. So I just want to call on our Zoom moderator, Jacqueline, to feed both Bartlett and Camille, a couple of them, whether it's a comment or question, and see if we can just deal with them before we continue. Jacqueline?
Right. So far, I have 2 for Bartlett, none for Camille yet, but I'm sure they'll be popping up. One thing would be what would you say to people with regard to the rights that they surrender when they post their content on a particular platform? Because, as you know, all of the various platforms do require that you give them certain rights before, when you post, rights to utilize the content that you have. And even though it's supposedly just for a narrow purpose, the wording is very broad. So what do you think about that? What would you advise people about that?
So I'll be brief. So this is where it goes from being fun to being pedantic and a bit, technical, which is you have to know what it is you're getting into when you're getting into something. And I think that's really critical for creatives. There is this, I would say, somewhat unfounded, assumption or stereotype that creatives, in particular, they're just about doing the creative work. They're not about the business side of things. But to the extent that may hold some morsel of truth, I think this is one of those cases where in the digital era, we need to push back against that state of affairs, because very often what you find is when you sign up for the latest cool online platform, if you were to actually review the terms and conditions that you are agreeing to, you would realize that in large part, very often you are in effect, and I'm using the word loosely, but giving up some of your sort of strict IP rights, especially in terms of your copyright. And I think that's significant because in effect, very often when you read lots of the terms and conditions for platforms, lots of the leading social media platforms, for example, what you'll realize that in effect, what you do is that you license to them the right to, without further consent from you, to reuse your content in various ways. And in some circumstances, to even monetize the reuse without your further permission. But you agree to that from the jump when you initially sign up and the app is popped up on your phone. You can't wait to get to it. You want to be on the timeline. And so you click, yes, I agree to these terms and conditions, even though realistically you haven't read them. And so instead of jumping into technicalities, all I would say is that it behooves us more so in the digital era than before to be aware of exactly what it is you're giving up and to ensure, perhaps more pointedly, that you're comfortable with it. Because this is not the same as saying, don't use these platforms. Of course you have to use them. If that's where your customers are, you better get there. But you have to be mindful of how you go about it. How much of your IP are you willing to sort of give up just to lure in potential clients and customers? Those are the conversations that you need to actually have in a more thoughtful and strategic way going forward.
Great, thanks. And then there was also a post from Rachel who talked about WIPO, the intellectual property organization, launching WIPO Proof, which is an online business service that rapidly produces tamper-proof evidence, which you can use to prove that your digital file existed at a specific point in time. She posted that in the chat. So emailing it to yourself, you don't need to do that anymore. WIPO's got a tool for that. Any comment?
Well, I mean, no comment except to laud WIPO for the work that they've been doing and the work they have done, specifically as regards to innovation. I think it went public something like yesterday or the day before. So it's not something that I am deeply familiar with beyond the stuff that's probably popped up on my own timeline on Twitter and so on. But it seems like, I think, a very good innovation, and that is way past due for the digital era.
All right, thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Bartlett. You know, we want to make sure we pack in as much as we can in this session, and eventually we'll see if we can dissect or pull out some of these little topics and then drill down into them further in future sessions. It's a great possibility that we're looking into. At this juncture, I want to shift a bit to Dr. Niles. So Dr. Niles, you have the research on these things, and you're a practitioner in the sense that you, in your consulting, work closely with creatives and, as mentioned, Freetown Collective as one of your more prominent clients. What are some of the innovative ways in which you have an existing product or existing brand as Freetown Collective? How do they develop a digital footprint? And also, how do you, could you talk a bit about how they have used social engagement as a tool towards their digital brand, as a tool towards their commercial activity? I know I'm not wording that quite clearly right now, but I think you have a couple of ideas in mind that you would like to share with us. So I'll let you lead the way at this point.
Okay, so good afternoon, Kevin. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much to the Internet Society for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. And we really want to agree with what was said before by Bartlett and Camille. Of course, very, very amazing contributions. It's funny that you would ask the question that you asked, because I was probably the last person to join this webinar, because every Thursday, Freetown has a concert on Facebook. Right, and so we have at, for context, our concert begins at 6 p.m. And I mean, it goes until like 7:30. You know, we have a pre-produced part and a live component. And so when I was first asked to do this, I was just like, I don't like missing it. So happy to be here, but that kind of answers the question. When COVID hit, we were kind of poised to go on tour because, well, right now, and this is, I'm only saying this because it's factual, right now, according to Cotton, we have the #1 song that is on rotation in Trinidad and Tobago, in terms of the song called Feed It Love. I mean, it was the second song we've ever done for Carnival. And so when it actually began to do well, we began to get calls. And everyone got optimistic. People actually began readjusting their lives, like telling their bosses, you know, I'm going to be away, you know, taking leave. People started to take actual tangible steps to be not in Trinidad and Tobago. And we had bookings, and quite a few. And then COVID hit. And so we took a massive financial and even emotional hit when COVID hit. But what it forced us to do was to immediately, well, actually it forced me to immediately pivot our activities and to see what can we do right now, right? And that's kind of what I'm going to kind of talk about. But for context, what I need to kind of say so people kind of understand how we actually able to do this, because what we've actually been able to do, as a summary, is we have these weekly concerts. We've redeveloped and relaunched our website, right? So we are re-engaging with persons on the internet in a brand new way. We have built an e-commerce platform into our website for the first time, so that persons can pay money straight into Freetown Collective. And we've now begun to reconfigure, I would say, our relationship with the private sector based on the fact that we ain't going nowhere. You know, that we are online, and our relationship to our, we call them residents, some people use the word followers, is going to be changed, right? But our experience, I realized, has been somewhat unique because of the nature of creative industries. And I kind of want to harp this point home. In the Caribbean, we have no shortage of talent, right? So getting more and more persons involved in the creative sector is not going to be hard, right? And I mean, to be honest, the issue isn't talent. So that's to be clear, right? We may have some capacity issues, because we use the term tech creatives, but we don't really just mean creatives that use computers. Most cultural work, most creative practice can actually be converted into a digital form. Most of it, not all of it, can be either converted or expressed in a digital form, right? And that is as techy as the person who is, well, not necessarily comparatively, but they can all be expressed in that way, in terms of if you use the term tech creators, right? But right now, in terms of the actual ability of people to create, that's not a problem. The issue is what happens after you create it. Yeah, usually. Because what I tend to tell people is, if you compare it to oil and gas, which tends to work for Trinidadians, you have an upstream which takes the thing out of the ground and is raw, but you can't take that raw thing and put it in your car because it will mash up your car. So you need a refinery, which is in the middle. We call that midstream, right? And the refinery converts that thing that we take out of the ground, that raw talent, into something that people will pay for, right? So that upstream is where you take it out of the ground. That midstream is the refinery. And then the downstream is the gas station, where you pay for the actual thing. Is where legal tender meets the product, right? And so the creative sector is not different. In the middle are people who take what the raw talent that you would hate, that you know, that you singing in your bathroom, right? If you can actually sing and people want to hear it, what a producer would do, a producer would refine that in a studio. And then what I would do is I would fit what I hear to a specific audience, right? And that only happens after a fair amount of market research, right? And then after we do that, then we place it on the market so that you can find it on iTunes and Spotify. Why is all of that important? Well, for two reasons. You see that middle piece in the Caribbean is really, really weak, right? So we have lots of talent. We have talent for days. But people who are going to be in the middle, doing the actual artist management, doing business, doing the market research, finding out where would you fit best, you know, doing actually marketing research, so that when you get onto the internet, you have a strategy. That piece is weak. And part of it is related to the education thing that Camille was talking about. And I'm going to be a little bit blunt here and not trying to be controversial, right? But I'm going to be blunt. Part of it is that many of us were raised to be employees. Yeah? Many of us were raised to be employees. And I'm going to go a bit deeper. You understand? I was raised to be an employee. When I went to primary school, when I went to secondary school, most of the teachers would say, if you don't do this, you can't get a job. If you don't do this, you can't get a job. They were training you not to own an enterprise. They were training you not to create something that you yourself would take to market. They were training you to work for somebody else that was taking something to market. So it is a psychological, to begin with, it's a psychological leap to tell yourself, okay, I am going to go to the office, I am going to register this company, I'm going to build a company and understand corporate governance for myself and become the employer. That's a bit of a jump. So in the creative sector, it is a huge challenge because persons, when they think about business, they try to separate business from the creative sector, and there's no need to do that. We need business people to be in the creative sector. And we need business people to leverage their skills in this sector in a very, very, very meaningful way, right? And so, I say that because we need people to form businesses in this sector. And that's why I always invite competition. Like, I'm in artist management. I help people make money from their creative goods and services. And I'm saying, if you would like to do that, please begin, because there is more than enough talent for you to help sell. So, and part of the problem here is that people who have the talent themselves don't want to be bogged down with market research. What is the data saying? They don't want to have to do these spreadsheets. Like, so this, to be very real with you, I pay Freetown's taxes. I do their annual returns. I do all of their banking. I do their cash flow statements. Well, I don't do it. I hire their accountant that does the cash flow statements. I review all the financial statements. I do all that stuff so that the artists can be artists. But I've realized that there aren't enough people doing that, right? And so I want to encourage people, definitely, if you're interested in that, or if you know someone with those kind of skills, get them interested in that so you can concentrate on creating. I think that's really, really important, because the fact that you don't have people like that around you is what contributes to the mindset of, well, I'm just trying a thing. I'm trying a thing, you know, at this point, you're not, I tell people, I've actually done this in the past, I would not recommend this either. I've told people, get out my office. If you're just trying a thing, leave. Listen, I am not here to work with people if you're just trying a thing. You are either doing this or you're not doing it. You understand? Kanye doesn't come up and be, I'm trying to, he's doing something or he's not doing. You understand? So we need to do our part in terms of the business of it so that creatives can create. You understand? And I want to encourage, and that's why I'm trying to reorient the university. And thankfully, the University of West Indies is now really making, a big effort to become more entrepreneurial, and that is huge, you know. So I think that is really, really important. The other thing I would say is part of the employee mindset is also part of the consumption mindset. You know, the being raised to earn a salary so you can pay for the things that you like, and not being raised to own the company that can make something that you like. And so I really, really feel that is really and truly how I think it really is a mindset shift that I think starts in home and it starts in school as well. Because this is the fact, right? If you want to know what we're doing and how we're doing it and what I think other artists need to do right now, every artist needs to sit back for a minute and really understand their product. And then they need to re-envision that same product. So in music, we sell live content, which is our gigs where we were going to go on tour, right? Or it's when we're on stage. We sell recorded content, which is what you hear on radio, which is what you hear in iTunes and Apple Music. And then we sell our brand, right? Which is our merchandise and endorsements. Those are the three things that we sell. It's important to understand those three products because each of them is monetized differently. Each of them is brought to the market differently. So you need to understand, what are you selling and what are people paying for? Because understanding that will also help you to understand how you can take it to a digital marketplace. You can't digitize a product that you don't fully understand. Let me just be very, very real with you. We understand why people will come to Freetown Collective and not another artist. So when we are digitizing our products, we digitize us. You understand? So one of the things that you really need to do is you need to understand your product and then begin to re-envision it. Understand what you're selling. And then once you understand that, then you can begin to really envision, how can I digitize this? The last thing that you need to do before digitizing, before running to digitize something, is after doing all this stuff that Bartlett talked about understanding the legal ramifications, understand deeply your unique selling. Yes, so your USP, your unique selling point. Understand why people are coming to you and not somebody else. You need to understand that before, because again, when you go online, you will digitize all of that. And it influences how you customize your space online, which is why I advise every artist and every group that I've ever worked with. I always tell them, it is not enough to have a social media presence. You need to have a website. In social media, you are competing with every single body, right? You need to have a home that you can make your own and that screams you. So if you go to wearefreetown.love, shameless plug, but it's true. If you go to wearefreetown.love, it screams Freetown Collective, right? It's our home. And I think that's really, really important. But we've done that because we have a clear strategy of what we want. And having a clear strategy right now is more important than ever, which is why it's not good enough to just be trying a thing, right? That's why it's like, right now you need a clear strategy. And I think the last thing I would say is, I think we need to be real about the barriers that we still face in the Caribbean, right? Because it's not just that, yeah, go online. Everybody says go online, you know, have e-commerce, have this. There are real structural challenges. If you come from a third world country, specifically, if you come from the Caribbean, right, there are real structural challenges to e-business. One, let's be real, there are large unbanked populations in the Caribbean, right? So in Trinidad and Tobago, 21% of the population does not have a bank account, right? An even larger population does not have credit cards. Why is this so huge, right? Let me tell you why it's huge in practice. When we released our album, we were extremely proud to release it on Amazon Music, Apple Music, Spotify, Deezer, Tidal, all at once, because we had digital music distribution, and we are very, very proud of it. My artists got accosted on the road. Well, not physically accosted, but somebody wanted to cuss them out on the road. Somebody started to yell at them saying, "Oh, you're not for the poor people anymore. Oh, you're not for the poor people anymore." And they were just like, "What happened?" He said, "I can't hear music. I can't hear." And they were just like, "Sir, you just need to go to Spotify." And the guy looked at them and said, "Do I look like I have a credit card? Do I even look like I have a computer?" And so they said, "Sir, we understand. We'll talk to our management and we'll come back. We promise we think of something." And we've now had to re-envision, you know, how we get our music out, because particularly for one segment of people that follow Freetown Collective, some of them have no interest in the bank, and some of them certainly have no interest in credit cards. So we have had to think about how we get our music out, and this has become such a huge deal that we've had Trinidadians go and establish digital music companies to compete with massive companies like CD Baby, TuneCore, DistroKid, which are large digital music distribution companies in the States. We've had persons in Trinidad like Shagun, Tova, Shagun Media, Tova Group, and Chromatics Music. Those are 3 companies based right here. Why do they even have a business? Well, if you ask Chromatics, he will tell you, he works with people that don't have bank accounts. He will go get your money for you, cash out your money, and pay you in cash. And now that we have COVID, he will do Western Union if you're in another island. He's doing he do whatever he has to do to service people that don't have bank accounts. Those are the kind of solutions that we need, but we will not get those solutions if we don't become more robust in our approach to the business of the sector. So we need to kind of get more people involved in the business of the sector, and not to shy away from it. So if your child says, "I'm interested in art," and they're also interested in entrepreneurship, they're also interested in business management. I had the same experience as Camille, because I was one of those kids. I wanted to do history, economics, and geography. And St. George's College principal looked at me and said, "Son, that is not a combination that you do in this school." And I said, "But those go together." I said, "History, economics, and geography, that's a natural combination." She was like, "Son, we have a business stream." If you grew up in the Caribbean, you know about the streams, okay? We have a business stream, a modern studies stream, a science stream. And so I was just like, I want my stream. I want history, and they allowed me to do it. Thank you very much, Principal Narayan, right? But my exams were on the same day. So I remember having to stay in school as a CXC supervisor all day because they put my exams on the same day because no one else, well, very, very few people, they said, chose that combination. I think if you're gonna write a new chapter in our history, if we're gonna enable business in this sector, we really, really need to allow people to flow nicely between science and the creative sector, between business and the creative sector. Because what we can do when we unlock the power of engineering in the creative sector is that we can reinvent the pan, for example. So one of the reasons why, not to stray, one of the reasons why some of the top research on new materials to build steel pan is actually done out of Sweden is because we didn't actually take the initiative to do metallurgy in Trinidad and how it applies to the steel pan. But when we begin to think in this direction, we unlock new opportunities. And so I'm really happy to have this conversation. Happy to take comments. If you disagree, it's fine, but I'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much for the opportunity again.
Thank you, Karen. Believe me, there are a lot of comments that have been going on and a lot of interesting back and forths. I like the point that you made about knowing exactly what you're selling. And I like the point that you also raised with the very practical considerations for who your audience is, who is consuming your music, and trying to understand the strategies that you put forward for those. And again, just as Camille has touched on, our education does not gear us towards what we need to do in a 21st century. And I think that's a big bugbear that we all have to chip away at. I want to bring in Jamila at this point. Karen, you were talking about, I mean, without even saying it directly, some of the creatives we work with, some of them may do something creative as a secondary vocation. They try acting people. And then some of them have understood that their art is a do or die situation for them. And therefore, that probably affects how you engage with them and how you advise them. Jamila, I know that your latest publication, something Karen had mentioned, mindset. Your latest publication addresses mindset specifically. And mindset, for instance, for people understanding what a digital brand is, what their personal brand is, and who they're exposed to. So you have to deconstruct the idea that they're just doing this for friends and family and they're on a bigger platform. I was just wondering if you can give us a bit more of your experiences in dealing with mindset, in working with creatives, and also if you could introduce something about some of the analytics that they may need to know of. Now, Karen had explained quite fully that they don't need to do it, but I think it's very useful for them to know some of the analytics behind what they do. So, for instance, when we approach social media, it's not just about posting for likes unsustainably, but there's supposed to be a thinking and a strategy behind it. So, Jamila, if you can come on now, we'd love to hear from you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much. Rounding out the top four, save the best for last. Okay, so guys, everybody's contribution so far has been really, really good, and it gave me a chance to actually put down some points in relation to everything, essentially. So just to give you a backstory, just to talk about the book a little bit, not to talk about the book directly, but the process in developing the book, right? So my book was supposed to launch on the 24th of March. Trinidad locked down on the 20th of March. Therefore, everything that had to do with anything physical, to do with any type of book launch, immediately got scrapped, right? So I had to think on my feet because my date was locked in on Amazon Kindle. And if you don't publish a book on the day you say, they will ban you from the platform for a year. And they will eliminate all of the money that you would have gotten in pre-sales, right? So I didn't have a choice but to pivot. So I couldn't be like, oh my God, what am I going to do, right? That wasn't an option for me. So I launched the book. I had an Instagram party, right? So I moved the entire party to Instagram. I went live all day. I changed my clothes between takes. I invited people onto interviews. I had wine, I was drinking. I had plenty of viewers, plenty of questions. And I had a digital wave going on. So I had people posting the picture of the book everywhere. And it changed the dynamic so much that somebody who launched their book after me did the exact same thing I did, right? So, because they had planned a huge party. It was a big event with performance and drinks and so on. And then when everything got canceled, they had to take some time to mentally recover because they didn't even know what to do, right? But because I operate in digital space, and for me, pivoting is really, really quick. It was easy to do. And I think a lot of us have to kind of get to that point. And because I had spent time building my brand in the digital space, it was easy for me to do that, right? So the first thing I want to say with regard to that, just an experience from a digital point of view, that when that also happened, the lockdown happened, I had a print on demand arrangement with Printtree. So whenever people order the book through my site, it goes to them, they print, they deliver, I never see the book, right? Straight print on demand, no Amazon involved, no foreign entity involved, 100% local, right? And that goes for even if people order the book overseas, print, demand, shipped from Trinidad, right? But when the lockdown happened, TT Post obviously went on a go slow. So then I jumped and I recorded an audiobook. I sell it for the same price now. So people from anywhere can actually buy the book, download it, and I don't have to ship anything, right? So what I also try to do is to kind of circumvent Amazon, because Amazon takes so much of your money. And that's another thing too that we have to understand, that when we give our intellectual properties to these platforms, they take so much from it. They take so much from it. So when you say people are bestsellers on Amazon, trust me, they have no money, because Amazon takes all, right? Amazon takes all, and they also have the right to put themselves as a publisher of your intellectual property, because they provide you with the ISBN for your property. So just keep that in mind, and that's for any platform. Amazon, ACX, all those platforms where you publish, where you rely on them to publish something, keep that in mind, regardless of what is going on. I just felt the need to kind of stick that in there. I know I'm supposed to talk brand, but just keep that in mind, right, when it comes to your IP. All right, so in terms of transitioning to the digital world from traditional forms of doing business brand-wise, I would say one of the first things I think people don't get, or they don't do well, is that they don't understand that a digital business is not a money machine from the point of view of, you don't build a website and expect people to just jump on and buy, right? It's a consistent set of work to build that brand. It's a consistent set of work to build that audience, to build that loyalty, and to ensure that all of your systems run smoothly. The worst thing is when you have somebody engaging with you on social media, and then when they go to your website, it's sticking, it's not working, they can't get the download, the process is not smooth, and people who don't experience smooth digital processes, what they do, they leave your site and they don't come back. That is what happens, right? So it's important that you build out those systems and have the system to support the brand you're about to build. Because it's one thing for you to be online, trying to position yourself as a creative, as an expert, as whatever you would like to position yourself as. And then when people try to get what they have to get from you, they can't access it, or it's not efficiently set up in order for them to access it, right? So, and that also affects your brand reputation, because if every time people try to access something, it doesn't work, you know, it really leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. So one of the first things you should really keep in mind is that you should really have a digital ecosystem. So from content to content that you place on whatever social platform, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, TikTok, wherever you are, and then you kind of guide them back to your website, critical, your real estate on the internet. This is your home, as Karen said, and then getting that onto your mailing list, right? So you have to ensure that they have enough incentive to give you their contact information, right? There must be that incentive, because for a lot of people, a website is like a big digital billboard. They don't provide anything other than information about themselves. After one read, that becomes boring. What else are you giving me on that platform? Or what else are you doing to build that relationship with me, so that I know there's always a reason for me to go back to that website. I know there's always a reason for me to go back and see what you're doing. That also contributes to your traffic count. That's a number you need to keep in mind, the amount of traffic coming to your website, because that allows you to deduce how many potential sales you can in fact get, right? So depending on how good your website is, I mean, industry standard tends to be around between 3 and 5%, you know, and as you come down, as you come down the funnel from broad to narrow, it becomes less and less. But the more people you have landing on your page, the more likely you are to have sales, right? So what you want to do is you want to be able to drive as many people there as possible. And the way you drive those people there is through valuable content. Valuable content is what allows people to see you, one, as the authority, two, that allows people to show interest in what you have going on. And also it keeps them loyal, it keeps them warm, so that from the time you drop your album, you drop your book, you can literally drop the recording of a class and make money. That is the way it works online. And that's how you could actually sell that into perpetuity. It will sell forever, right? So, that music coming from? Somebody's mic is on.
Hello?
All right. Okay. Right. So that's one of the big things. The second thing is to jump mentally to show up online is a big one for a lot of people. Putting yourself out there, putting yourself in front of the cameras. There's one woman who I talked about going online for her business. She has a store in somewhere in Shogunas, and she's out of sight because she's in one of those malls. And when I told her about going online, the woman told me she does not want to be made into a meme, so she's not doing any social media, right? You know, she's like, you know, I don't like my teeth. You know, people might turn me into a meme. These are real mental blocks people deal with when it comes to putting themselves out there. And it is amazing how your mind stops you from doing things. It's not like you have a physical ailment. It's not like you can't, it's not like you are off the grid, you have no internet. It's not like you are unbanked, you have an account, you have all these sensibilities in your head, and some voice in your head will tell you, well, somebody might turn you into a meme. And then that stops your entire production from going online. And these are some of the mindsets that I try to wash away, you know, mindset washing. So that's kind of wash away all of those things by reprogramming people in different ways. And that includes a lot of things. Some of the things, Karen, you mentioned, the kind of people you have around you, the kind of encouragement you receive, the kind of media you're consuming. You know, when you sit online and you consume nonsense media all day, it really does nothing, doesn't add anything to you. It doesn't put anything into your space or your spirit as an authority. You know, switching into that mindset, you still have a sense of, how should I say, you're still scared of a lot of things. So it really is important that you not see yourself as one small thing in a big sea of things, but the big fish in the sea. And until you have that type of mindset, you will continue to not show up for your brand, right? So another thing is showing up, understanding that they are part of the world market now. You're online, so now you have access to a huge market. So the island mindset where people don't want to push their brand beyond their normal network is also an issue. You know, they don't want to engage with people outside of, you know, outside of their own culture, outside of their own country, outside of maybe their own language. They don't want to engage with those types of people. And sometimes people don't even think that they could actually engage. Like, you do that? If I tell them, well, I'm speaking at this digital festival in June, and I'm the only Black person there, and I'm also the only person from the Caribbean there, they will ask me, how you found out? And I'll say, in a group. And they will say, what group? I said, a Facebook group. It's as easy as that. You find opportunities when you put yourself out there. You connect, your network exponentially grows, but you have to be building your brand. You have to be out there. You have to be connecting. You have to be networking. You have to be the one initiating the conversation. You have to come with something to the table. If you're not doing that, then you're not going to be able to really build your brand as globally, build your brand at all, and certainly not globally. Because people on the other side of the globe, people in developed nations, they are looking for opportunities. They like people that are different. They like accents that are different. They like stories that are different. And they want to be able to see those things. And they grab them up when they have the opportunity. So the fact that we are on this island doesn't make a difference to anybody who's looking for value. If you have value to offer, put yourself out there, build the brand that you need to build in order to get yourself out there. Right? Most people consume it also, right? So the next thing is creating products, programs, and launching them profitably. So that is something else a lot of people don't know how to do. I myself didn't know how to do it. Thank God I know how to do it now. So, so a lot of people spend a lot of time creating a lot of things, doing a lot of things, and then they launch and crickets, nobody buys. And it's because they never spend the time building the audience. They never spend the time warming up the public. They never spend the time actually putting themselves in a space to build that level of anticipation within people so that people are literally salivating for your product. But because you never spend the time doing that, you spend all your time creating something, never validating the offer, having no idea if people even want what you are trying to sell. You end up doing all of the work and you get none of the reward. So everything has a strategy built into it. It's really important that you do that, especially as a creative. And as long as you're creating original products, you're creative. I've created, I usually sell, I only sell my own products. Some people sell affiliate stuff, some people resell stuff that they're probably shipping. I create original products. And for those of you who are creating original products, it really is important that you spend time building your audience. And I'll just tell you a quick story. Last night, this guy in another group, of course, because I'm in tons of groups, he is selling this product to help people make voiceovers at home. So you could probably make money from your voice if you have a cool voice, I suppose. This guy had, I think it's about 1,000 people register for a webinar, and about 400 of them, no, 1,000 people landed on his landing page. 400 people registered for his webinar, and about half of those people attended, but nobody bought. So he spent all his money in ads, nobody bought, right? So then I said, how did you get those people in the webinar? He said, advertising. I said, well, I ran a webinar, and when I pitched, I had a 10% conversion rate. And he said, how you did it? So I told him my process. He said, well, my process is the same. I said, but the difference with you is you advertise. I don't advertise. I just put it out. People sign up. They come. I pitch. They buy. Because I spend the time building with my audience. And I only had 29 people on my webinar, and only 20 of them showed up, right? But I still sold. But the point is, if you don't spend the time building the audience and building the brand, people will not buy. You can't sell to a cold audience. It's like walking up to a stranger in the street and say, hey, would you buy this for me? People will say, get away from me, you're crazy. That's what they will say, right? So that is really, really important. And that's a relationship that takes a little bit of time. So it means a consistent flow of content, a consistent flow of value, a consistent flow of engagement with people, and a consistent asking them to take action. If you could get people to like, you could get them to share, you could get them to comment, you can get them to buy. So it's a logical process that you need to keep in mind when it comes to building brand. And the final thing I have to say here is the notion of creating multiple streams of income from a single piece of content. So I wish I had my book near me. I don't want it on the table, but the next level of creation and the next level of growth for the creative is really understanding how they could actually turn a single piece of creative content into multiple streams of income, right? And there are some pieces of content that will be more powerful than others. So a book is a really, really powerful piece of content, and you could do so much with a book. You could create audiobooks, you could create ebooks, you could create paperback books, you could create courses, long courses, high ticket coaching, you could create immersive programs, you could create radio shows, you could create TV shows, you could create so many things. You can monetize a YouTube channel, you could create so many things. You could create masterminds, you could create huge events, so many things you could create from a single piece of creative work. And we need to start thinking on those levels if we really want, because I intend to be very, very rich. I don't know about you. So I want to be able to create as many streams of income from one book, 2 books, how many other books. And once you start with one, it's very easy to create another one and another one and another one. But the idea is understanding how to monetize those pieces. So when you see people have a YouTube channel and they have like 1 million subs or whatever the case may be, right? And YouTube probably is giving them a little kakada, to be very honest. And YouTube is not really giving them a lot, right? But those people have so many streams of income coming out of that. Sponsorship deals, they have placement deals, they have courses that they sell, high ticket, low ticket courses, they have tripwire products that they sell. And when you sign up for one free thing, boom, you're hit with, why don't you get this? It's just $10. Why not? And that's like a stream of income that, you know, they don't even have to touch. It just keeps coming and just keeps coming and just keeps coming. So these are the opportunities you create for yourself when you start to think outside of the box and start to understand how powerful your content can be and how powerful your brand can be to actually earn you money into perpetuity, legacy you can leave for your children and they will continue. Can you imagine the person who wrote The Richest Man in Babylon? That book is still being sold today, and that book has been written for many, many years. People like Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, that book has been written for years, and he will continue to make money from that book, right? So whether you have a show, whether you have a name, something as simple as your name being put onto a product can bring you money, but it means that you have to build a brand to be strong enough to command the said money. So it's really important that you use digital media to your advantage. It's great to be online for entertainment purposes. It's great to be online to laugh and look at memes and, you know, quarrel for doubles and KFC and stuff when we're on the lockdown. But while you're doing all of that, please know that there are some other people who are sitting there creating and churning out content. So I have my fair share of engagement on Facebook, but I spent a lot of my day repurposing one idea. So for the week, I will produce about 10 different things from that one idea. A blog post, a LinkedIn article, a video where I record my screen teaching from slides, a regular video, Facebook, Instagram carousels, Instagram stories, any number of things, emails that I send out, any number of things with that single idea, deriving a bunch of different nuggets, lessons from that idea so that as many audiences as possible get a taste of what I have to say. So that's my contribution to the discussion. There's power in content, there is money in content, and there's a lot of empires building content. Just think of Tony Robbins, think of Dean Graziosi, think of Russell Brunson, think of Gary Vee. All of those people make money on content. And they leverage advertising, they leverage digital, they write books now. There's people paying Gary Vee over $150,000 just to speak for half an hour in one event. That is the kind of money you can derive from your name if you build the brand correctly, you're consistent, and you deliver value. That's it.
Jamila, wonderful, tremendous. I love particularly the point you've been making about using your social presence, your social media presence for productive use. I think that's a very, very important thing. So for instance, for years, if you were to look at the Network Readiness Index for Trinidad and Tobago, we have consistently ranked very high when it comes to technology uses. But when you look at economic impact, it is quite low because, as you're saying, I think a lot of people are more bogged down with the doubles and KFC type debates and not really trying to network via different groups and the like. We have come to a point, folks, and I just want to announce that we want to address the flurry of questions and comments that came up in the chat from when Karen was speaking and Jamila, and we crave the indulgence of everyone here to just hold on a bit more because ideally we were supposed to stop right now, but if we could just hold on a bit more, address the comments that were placed in the chat, and possibly, I don't know, if we have like 50 more minutes, if we could even turn on a few mics at that point, and then we'll close off in about the next 15 to 20 minutes. I really hope that you can all bear with us and we could complete that. So I'll hand over now to Jacqueline, who would go through some of the comments that were coming in. I think I recognize it was Betty Foster and a couple of others commenting way back when Karen was making his intervention.
Right. So some of the stuff that came in with regard to Karen, Betty Foster said that she doesn't really agree because they don't educate you to be a dad or how to date someone. The community and family can impact the ability to have all the keys to become a successful entrepreneur. It's our duty and not others' fault. Basically, more it's a personal thing that one can overcome circumstances and overcome how the school directs you, and you yourself should be able to, with the support of your home and community and so on, be able to get into that yourself. Karen, any comment on that? Or?
This is knowing how to socialize and leverage relationships.
So obviously, I understand the person is saying here in terms of, well, yeah, so my dad taught me how to be really good to my sisters, and he demonstrated how to be a good husband, so therefore I will learn how to be a good husband and a good father. And I understand the demonstration effect. Equally, I also understand that when my dad demonstrates to me how to be an employee and when he demonstrates by his life and by his advice that you know, what you want to do is you want to set up yourself to have a good CV rather than setting up yourself to own assets. And or the difference is a shift from having my don't get me wrong, love my dad, but there's a totally different mindset, plane of thinking when it comes to being the person who, you know, is aiming to become rich by getting a good job and being wealthy. So it's the person who is getting a really nice paycheck, being against being the person who is signing the checks. So when you are signing the checks, you have legal responsibilities. No one is really preparing you for that, right? And so just to be very, very clear, I had lunch with someone from a family in Trinidad and Tobago whose families own many businesses in the country. And I was asking them, so what did you study? He was just like, well, I studied like finance. And I was just like, and you just decided to start a finance company? And they stopped me and said, Karen, in this family, if you study culinary arts, you're going to open a restaurant. If you study finance, you're going to open a financing firm. If you study design, you're going to open a marketing company. That is just how they were raised. And it's a total and complete and utter mindset shift from just say, okay, so I understand what you're saying about the community, but the other thing that I really want to put out to you is that culture eats strategy for breakfast every single time. So when I was growing up, just to be real with you, I went to Bartow Secondary Comprehensive School and then to Georgia's. When I was in Bartow Secondary Comprehensive School, first of all, I was on the football team. And the other men on the football team, they weren't trying to own companies. That's to be real. As a matter of fact, what they said to me is, Karen, you look like a man that might actually make something of yourself. When you grow up, by the time you're 35, I'll come back and check you, get my job, please. That's what they said to me. When I was in school, they said, I would check you for a job. You look like you're going somewhere. You understand? And that was not an uncommon sentiment. Most of them, I don't want to get too real or too like grimy, but most of the fellas on that team either wanted to get a decent job or a girl with a good job. One of the two. None of them were even on the same plane of I'm gonna own a company. Even though some of them were the most skillful carpenters in the entire school, most skillful carpenters, incredible masonry, like, because we had those things in school. You understand? Some of the teachers would be like, wow, that guy, you're good at welding. But not for a million years would you think, I could open a water iron company and start, building gates from scratch. No, it is culture would eat strategy for breakfast every single day. And so when they said the home has a responsibility, yes, it does. It certainly does. But the wider culture that we craft in our schools is actually really reinforced by a curriculum that is making employees. You understand? And I think that it would be remiss of us not to at least recognize that. And I'll leave it there. Sorry.
I just wanted to bring in Camille on this because there is, Crystal was reminding us of the time when, for example, Belmont was full of small entrepreneurs, the cobblers and the tailors and so on and so forth. And then suddenly everybody wanted to be a civil servant. Now, we know that the British system really was designed to build civil servants. But one of the things that happened then is that most people weren't allowed, didn't have the opportunity to go to school to become a civil servant. So they became craftsmen and entrepreneurs. But how do you think this, when you're talking about education and the world of work, Camille, how do you think that connected? Because I know like in the late 70s when we got more people in school, a lot more people were able to go into the civil service because that was what they aspired to. And is that when entrepreneurship started to fall down, or?
That's a tough question, but I wanna, when it comes to the creative economy at the moment, a kind of investment is needed that is kind of drastic, right? So it's like we have to let go everything and really, really invest in this area, because how this was set up through our education system, as you said, and Karen also said, it was not made with entrepreneurship in mind. And it is the same today. It hasn't changed. It was not made. So some drastic measures. Now, there's a wonderful Korean concept of investing in the creative economy that started in 2007. It's a wonderful model. Karen, it'll be good for you to read that too, where the South Korean country, they deliberately, Jacqueline, invested in the creative economy, like unapologetically. And what they did was unapologetically put out their content out there. So now, after 10, 15, 12 years, you have things like Parasite winning the award for best film in wherever, right? You have K-pop happening. You have gaming sector that is like ultimate in Korea. That was not a mistake, and that didn't just happen. That is 10 years of investment, 15 years of investment in the creative economy. I say, and I want to look back at, let's say, for instance, the oil and gas, right? Because we always talk about oil and gas when we talk about Trinidad and Tobago. When we discovered oil in Trinidad and Tobago, however long that was, did we say to the people who were digging the oil to go and invest in it? Are they doing a good thing? Go on, find the money and we'll see. Did the country do that? No, they literally held the hand of this new emerging opportunity in Trinidad and Tobago, and they physically invested in it. And this is what needs to happen in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean and the rest of the world. But the South Korean model shows that from their investment in 2007, they created something called the Korean Wave. And Jacqueline, would you believe that the game sector is worth up to $11 trillion today? And I had to go in and research it and say, wait, let me see, it's 11 trillion Korean dollars, so it might be 1 million US, but it's $11 trillion. That is very close to what $11 trillion is in US. That's a deliberate investment, and that is the kind of intervention we need. We just have to do it. But will they? It's another question.
Great. Sorry, I was looking at my notes. Shannon's been asking about collaboration. How do we work together to get all this stuff done? Is it that we're small, and if we work together, we can form a size that can support an industry in this way? What do you? That's for everybody. Let's start with Bartlett.
Well, I mean, so to get a lot of this to happen, in my view, I think we have to recognize the role of the different sort of constituent, groups within a society. There's the government itself, there's civil society, there are the actual industries themselves, and by extension, the industry bodies and what have you. So there are a few things that we need if we want to get on the road to further on these processes. I think we need more or better mechanisms for direct feedback into what it is that we want in the different, in Trinidad, for example, what exactly does an enabling environment look like? Actually roadmap it, and not just have some government consultant write and say what they think it is. Actually have meaningful input from the different sectors in society on what this looks like, what kind of platforms do we need, what kind of support do we need, what is the end game in 10 years. You need that kind of collaboration. It goes beyond, for example, just having, so there are certain, I think, building blocks that you do need. So for example, I've seen reference in the chats to things like industry associations. You need that because you need to have a collective voice, speak forcefully in a way that will be listened to. but you also need opportunities for those voices to be heard. You know, one of the challenges we face, I think, in the region, Trinidad also, but certainly in the region, is that, for example, governments have a way of assuming what we need, not actually doing the research and taking meaningful inputs. And then they sort of just build out a roadmap that's devoid of actual inputs from the people who need the roadmap. So I think I'll leave it there for now, but I feel like certainly we need a more genuinely open and collaborative approach to planning the future around these things.
Anyone else want to step in?
I just made I put my notes in writing as well. But when it comes to collaboration, in addition, in the creative sector, we don't use industry associations enough, right? Because that allows people to kind of work from the same score sheet. So it's like for example, there might be a videographer on here. I think I saw a comment, right? I remember speaking to photographers have the same issue, even producers have the same issues in music, right? What will happen is somebody with a lot of experience in videography who has a good presence in the industry will get a call from somebody and say, I need this done, I need X done, I need Y done, I need Z done, right? And then the videographer would give a price, right? What would happen is if the business person isn't happy with the price, they then call a recent graduate who knows how to use a camera, probably has an eye, and they do it for like a fifth of the price or like a tenth of the price. And that kind of breeds bad blood in the industry anyway. But you can say that that's competitive, that's competitiveness, that's what we have by having open markets, right? However, what happens when that person does a bad job? What kind of reputation does the industry as a whole get if the person that ordered the service is not satisfied with the service? When you have an industry association, you actually have clauses about dispute settlement. You have clauses about what kind of recourse you can have if you're not satisfied with the work you got. You know, so you can also have price standardization in terms of set ranges for specific things. And so people actually can begin to have they can begin to plan and budget properly for when they have projects going on. And you have less undercutting in the industry, but also when you have industry associations, you can have a steady platform for apprenticeships and internships, which we are, like, you see, the issue of mentorship in this sector is an issue that we also need to kind of talk about, like bridging the divide between persons who have been out there for a long time and persons who want to learn. Like, for one, and in some sectors, the creative economy, I won't call any names, it's worse than others, but persons who have real experience should be open to teaching those that have less, right? But there needs to be some kind of structure to allow that to happen, right? Industry associations can be very, very helpful, and that enables a lot of collaboration, because what kills collaboration is mistrust. What kills collaboration is, I don't know if you're gonna take my idea and my creative touch and you're gonna teeth it for yourself. You understand? But when you have an industry association, you can register, like, this is my project. You can register a project. You can also register your internships and your apprenticeships, so that there is a system where people who are now starting off can learn from those who have been in for years and can avoid some of the same pitfalls and mistakes. And it will also make us more credible to other persons who want to demand our goods and services. So I feel like that is a really important point if we want to make collaboration a lot easier, a lot better. Yes, we do need investment from the state, don't get me wrong, but I feel like we also, in ourselves, we need to begin to actually formalize our associations so that we can have collaboration with and really break down some of the barriers to that exist.
I just mentioned something regarding that same collaboration, Jacqueline. When it comes to the animation industry, collaboration is key. It is key, it's critical. And especially when it comes to the Caribbean, Trinidad being a success in animation, or let's say outsourcing for games, is not going to do well for overall industry because we are not enough. Trinidad is not enough. We need to have studios in Jamaica. We need to have studios in Grenada. We need to have studios in Barbados. We need to have the studios because of the amount of content that is needed right now. So that idea of collaboration is extremely critical when it comes to this particular industry, because there's not enough people doing the production in this particular sector. So it's very, very important.
Can I add one more thing with the collaboration?
Yes, please, Jamila.
I'm glad you guys actually talked about, because I actually also have a podcast, and that's the exact topic we talked about this week, collaborating in business and how that actually gets your brand so far. You know, it's your ticket to accessing new markets without having to pay. That is the most strategic part of it for me, being able to access somebody else's audience, being able to access somebody else's influence without having to spend money to get in there via advertising or whatever means you'd like to get in there. I value collaboration so highly, and because I digitally network a lot, you know, I collaborate with people from all over the world all the time for different things, you know, whether it's a collaboration on a video for us to go live together. People are like, oh, who's this English woman you have on your thing? And I'm like, well, somebody who I met online, you know, and, you know, so it really does help. It helps you and it helps the other person. And I also do a lot of bartering. I do a lot of service bartering in order for me to get what I need, for me to grow my brand, because that one it engenders that trust that that Karen just talked about. It engenders that a lot, and I actually do a lot of mentoring too. Right now I have 2 young ladies I'm actually bartering. I'm not even paying them money. I'm giving them all of my knowledge, and they're like, okay, yeah, but it's okay if you can't pay us. When they told us we will continue to work for you, right? And somebody actually reached out to me via LinkedIn over the last couple of days wanting to be an intern. And for me, mentorship is a huge ticket into building a loyal audience, because when I take people and turn them into my advocates, what then happens is that I don't have to work as hard to build the brand that I want to build. People will do it for me. And relationship allows you to do that. Relationship gets you into doors and money can't. That's just the way it is. You know, so you as for an industry, for fledgling industries or industries where you need representation, and leveraging industry associations and so on, what that allows you to have is representation, so that you can lobby for things for yourself, so you can lobby for things for industry, so you can get things. But people, that can't happen if you are not working together and collaborating with each other on different projects and on different ways to move ahead, to move forward.
Great. Thank you so very much, Jamila. So I'm taking over back from Jackie at this point. I know there has been so much conversation going on here in the comments, and I think this is a good sign that we would need to probably do follow-up sessions of this nature, probably dissect one of the things that we raised here. I just want to read one last comment before we close, and that comes from Kieran Swift. He was talking about an unpopular opinion about putting equal emphasis on critical, independent thought, especially in the age of deepfake, alternate facts, fake news, and information overload. We all need to relearn the art of skepticism so we can focus on what's real and what's really valuable. And he had placed some links there in the chat. Folks, I think this was a tremendous session altogether. I'd like to thank our esteemed panelists for joining us here tonight, for bringing their expertise, their personal experiences, some of the pitfalls that they face, and some of the good lessons and learnings that we all can use in going forward. And I also like to thank all of you, the audience, who connected with us here tonight. Only very few people logged off at the 8 o'clock mark, which is a good indicator that this really engaged your attention. And we'd be more than happy to have some follow-up with this content. And on the issue of follow-up with this content, what I would like for you to know is that this recording will go out to you via email once you had registered. And also, you can also interact with the recording on the Facebook page. If you're creative and you found that this content was useful, just drop a comment on the Facebook page, and or also go to the website isoc.tt. If you have any other lingering questions that probably we didn't address on mic, or they weren't answered in the chat by panelists, Also, feel free to send us an email at contact@isoc.tt, and we'll be sure to filter it out to our panelists. So without further ado, I'd like to thank you all very much for this experience, and do look forward to future activities that we'll be having at isoc.tt. And I wish all of you a great and wonderful evening, and do stay safe in these times. Thank you so very much. And of course, if anyone wants to unmute their mic and say bye, that's all well and good as well.
Bye, everyone. I want to give a shout out to a student of mine, an ex-student when I taught at UWI. She's actually on the chat. Her name is Crystal Moon, and she is awesome. She doesn't live in Trinidad, but she's going to be a great asset to Trinidad and Tobago. And I hope she returns home. Hi, Crystal.
I just want to tell people, please connect with me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, but on LinkedIn, because that's where I live. Connect with me there if you want to connect with me.
I'm actually gonna type my Instagram on the chat. It's @KaronNiles. That's the best way to reach out at me. So I'm on Instagram at @KaronNiles. Good to see you, Colleen. All right.
Thank you so much, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you to isoc.tt for having me. It was my absolute pleasure. Take care and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bartlett.
All right, I think we probably still have an after party going on here. I see a lot of people still connected.
Yeah, thanks to all these speakers and participants. I know I was the silent, being the chair of the chapter, but you know, being the silent in the background, working sometimes is the better way.
Yes, I do apologize, Niran. All of this work that Niran was pulling off in the background. Anytime you see me look away from the camera, I'm chatting via WhatsApp with Niran, and we're doing a whole host of things in the background while this was going on. So many thanks to you, Niran, our chair here at isoc.tt. And of course, Jackie is putting up some of the details here in the chat for you to continue interacting with us. And pretty soon we're going to cut off the recording. So
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everyone had access to the email and the website. Karen put his information in there. Anybody else you want to get in touch with, you can do that via us. So, and please leave comments. You can say how great it was or not. And please, if you have other topics, that would be super cool. Okay?
right.
Now I can count down into the shutdown. 5.
Before we shut,
Okay.
isoc page, I'm going to drop that link right now.
Did.
Oh, we did.
I did. That's what I said I was just doing.
I see isoc.tt and contact is there. I refer to the Facebook page. Sorry, I misspoke.
Oh, okay.
All right. So the Facebook page is the isoc.tt public. I think we covered all bases now.
Yeah.